So how's your week going?
I dropped my kid off in Maine. They're 20 hours away from where I am, Jen, and they've
That's
gone
exciting.
radio silent.
That's not fun.
No, no. They have not responded to any text messages since about 11 o'clock yesterday morning.
Right. So let's jump into it because,
Yeah. Welcome to Learn to RV, the podcast. I'm Tasha. That's Jennifer. And today we're going to talk about part 2 of launching your kids into the real world. And it's been about a year since we kind of first talked about this on the pod, but now we're like in the thick of it.
And so much has changed since we, the planning phase that we talked about on that podcast is so very different than what real life has turned into. And so I think that's one of the hardest things. And I say it all the time. And I know people get tired of me saying this, but I think it's way easier to raise toddlers.
I agree. My gosh,
but you won't agree with that or us until you get to this stage in life where you're launching like young adults.
Yeah, I really miss the days of Rosewood not understanding how to suck milk out of a bottle and like having to syringe feed them. I would take that over going, "Are you alive in Maine right now?" and getting no response. That syringe feeding feels more comfortable to me than no response to, "Have you been kidnapped in Maine? Where are you in Maine?"
At the time you didn't think that way. Like at the time
No.
that was hard. And so
Yes.
I think that every phase of life that we go through is just a whole thing. And so I don't want to discount what people go through with toddlers.
For
I
real.
remember my daughter wanted to learn how to wash dishes. So she'd get out the stool and she'd come up and I'd be like, "You're going to die because it's going to get slippery because you're going to get it all wet." And, discouraging kids from helping around the house is not something you want to do because then when they're teenagers, they'll still help if you don't. And so, I would learn that much later in life, and let toddlers help with dishes. But at the same time, when you're in the thick of it, changing diapers, chasing toddlers, it feels hard. And you don't realize, there's so much that I don't want to say I wish my mom told me, but I mean, like looking back, there's so much I wish I knew before my kids got to be adults and what that looked like in real life. And then, I never thought to look back at my life and where we were when we were raising kids and what adults looked like. And, back then we didn't have cell phones when we launched.
Oh, yeah.
So, my mom would go weeks without hearing from me because I didn't want to pay the phone bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I keep remembering when I left Kansas City for Joplin. I just keep remembering loading everything up into my little car and driving off into the unknown. That memory keeps coming back to me. And I kept having that memory as I was driving Rosewood to Maine. And I thought, okay, you know what? This is so different because I literally went to Joplin. When I moved to Joplin, it was, 3.5 hours away from where I had grown up to that point. And I was literally moving to another part of the state by myself. I knew some people there. I was going to Bible college and I knew some people that I was going to be going to school with, but I didn't have a cell phone. I was really going on my own. I hadn't set up a job. I was really depending on I've saved up money to pay for school. And so I was just kind of like, I'm prepared for this little bit and then I'll figure it out when I get there. And I went kind of like on a prayer and a hope and a whim. But for Rosewood, we did everything that we could to try and help them go prepared. And they have a cell phone and they have connections there with the company that they've been employed with. The apartment has 2 separate lock pads that you have to get through to get to their apartment. So it's very safe. It's a really safe town. So that kept going through my mind when I was dropping them off was this is a very different time. And yes, this is very much further away They are going very much further away than what I went from in my first moving away from my hometown, but I feel like they are set up more for success, and that gave me some peace that I didn't,
Oh, for sure.
you
And
know.
you know it's a seasonal gig. So I mean, like there's that. So, if at the end of this I mean at the end of the season, it's not like that area stays open all year round. So chances are pretty good that they're gonna come back for a season and then maybe launch again next season and you'll feel better about next season because you've already done it once. So,
Yeah, I don't
or
know.
not.
They are not right now, they're not talking about coming back for a season. They've only been gone a week and they're like, "Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna stay gone." I was really like, I was really looking forward to them coming home like for Christmas, but they're like, I think I'm gonna stay gone. I'm like, "Okay.
But it's only been
Mama
a week.
loves
So
you."
yep. Well, I mean, when we hit the road full time, I don't talk about it much, but my 18-year-old didn't come with us. And
Uh-huh.
so she did not have a plan and she moved in with friends and she did that for 4 years. So, I mean, then she came home for a season and then she launched back out and now she's, living successfully in North Carolina. So, I mean, sometimes things happen the way they're going to happen.
Yeah.
Last year, um, we were talking about our kids going off together, and that didn't happen. And so
Right.
I still have a kid at home this season that we didn't expect to have at home. She's 19 and, not sure what to do with life. So right now, the plan is to still travel with us this summer. So, that is definitely a shift from when we first introduced launching kids into the real world several months ago. And they had applied together initially, and then they chose different paths. So, and that
Yeah.
happens, I mean,
Mhm.
like on the road, I think that that's just something that we don't realize in launching teens into the real world. And I've done it several times, and they weren't teens, some of them by the time they launched, but my two boys that are, so I'm just going to go numbers here because we have seven. So number 2 child had moved out at the age of 18 and he's married. Last year, he convinced his 2 next brothers, so, the next 2 in line, so 3 and 4, to move in with him and his wife in Texas. And a month from tomorrow, they have to be out of that lease because some things have changed and it's not a good fit for everybody. The oldest son had a baby and well, his wife had a baby and the boys didn't sign up for living with a baby.
Right.
So life shifted, so now we're trying to we're back in Texas right now trying to help them navigate some of those hard decisions and what to do with it. And so rent is hard and stupid expensive no matter where you are in the country, and
Yeah.
so we're just trying to help them figure all that out. Yeah. So it's not, I don't I don't think it's an easy topic to talk about, but I mean, there's things you can do to prepare for it.
Mhm.
You can have your kids dual enroll a lot of times in college courses, and so they're getting ahead of the game while they're still school age, and a lot of times that's free. So that's one of the great things that you can do as a homeschooling, road schooling family. But I don't think moms are ever prepared for where that takes us and just the whole other side of that. And I've
Yeah.
done it a few times now. We've done it 4 times, and I don't think you ever stop worrying.
Right.
And I don't mean that in like I don't mean that though in like a, oh my gosh, I don't panic when I don't hear from them because I know that they're busy. They've got their life 360. I can see that they're on unless they go under
I forgot
5%, and
about
then I'm
that.
ready to kill them.
I forgot about Life 360.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I'm gonna make sure my child is
See, and
still
I
in the
didn't
town
put
they're
Life
supposed
360
to be
on my
in.
phone, Tasha. My kids put Life 360 on my phone because when I'm at a rally and I'm busy, they wanna know that I'm still alive. So they check on me kind of differently in some way.
Well, my problem is that I listen slash read slash watch way too much true crime. So when I have text messages that go unanswered for too long, my brain goes, someone is in a trash bag on the side of the road.
I know, I've
So
been in the car with you.
I know. So, I'm freaking out, but I forgot about us downloading Life 360 this last winter. But Matt just gave me the thumbs up that they are still in the town that they're supposed to be in. So we've at least got that going for us, big win for the Life 360 there. I feel like I can breathe a little bit.
I
We
am
did
sure
find
that Rosewood is just busy, you know, doing things like learning how to do the
eating
things that they're
lobster.
doing work camping with. And
Today is their first day off since they started work, and so they were going to go explore the other side of the island that they live on. So I,
but didn't so let's talk about your trip there because that was a thing.
yeah.
Like you did this whirlwind trip and actually dropped them off personally, right?
Yes, I did. So we left from Kentucky. We are staying at Firefly Hills at Troy and Tanya's beautiful park, and it was kind of wonderful because this has kind of become like a home away from home for us, right? And so it gave Rosewood like a nice launching pad. It was a place that was familiar for them, and that was also nice because it came off of the kind of heartbreak of having to say goodbye to our cat Edward after 17 years. And so it was like a nice comfort before having this big major life change, right? So it was like, let's take a breath for a week and now let's load up into this car and drive for 20 hours. So we got a rental car and Rosewood and I left Lexington, Kentucky on a Thursday evening last week. And we drove about 4 hours into West Virginia and we got an Airbnb and we stayed overnight. We got up the next morning and then we drove 11 hours into Massachusetts and got there at about midnight. Well, a little bit earlier than that because we went to a Wendy's, so it was before midnight at a in a town called Awagama. I I probably butchered that, but I had never heard of this town before. But we stayed at an Airbnb, and what was wonderful about this Airbnb is that they had 2 cats, and the cats welcomed us with open paws, and they were, like, all ready to curl up and cuddle whenever we got there, and it was, like, the perfect end to a very long day of driving. So we stayed there. We got up the next morning at 5 a.m., and I was just like, "This
Oh
is
wow.
horrible." But we had a plan. We drove to Salem, Massachusetts, which is like one of our favorite little towns to walk through and explore together. And we stopped there and we had breakfast at the Ugly Mug, which is this little diner they serve like the best breakfast. Their breakfast is so good. So we had a really good breakfast. We walked down and got coffee at our favorite coffee shop. We went into a bookstore. We just walked around and smelled some candles and I just did some things. So we had like a nice morning together before we went the rest of the way into Maine. We got there, got checked in with Emily. She's managing all of the employees as they're checking in. And Rosewood is working with a group they have on site housing for employees. And they're fans of Acadia National Park. So I have my Acadia National Park t-shirt on today. I also have my Maine necklace that I bought. I'm all dressed up for Maine. So they have on-site housing. Emily showed us the apartment, gave us like a tour through. We stopped by, forgot to mention, when we first got there, we went to a bike shop in town and they were selling their old rental bikes that they had like refurbished. So we bought Rosewood a bicycle so that they can ride through town and everything. It's a very walkable, rideable little harbor town. And then we went and then got in there. They were the first person. They're still only the first person in their apartment. There will be 3 more roommates to come over the next couple weeks. And they got to choose their bed. We had to carry all of their stuff up a lot of flights of stairs. They they packed all of their books in one suitcase instead of separating things out. So I have footage of I was like, I'm gonna let you take this suitcase up these stairs. So I might put that on Patreon for all of our lovely subscribers to see. But yeah, it was a long trip, but it was a good trip. it was a lovely time being able to go up there together. And then we got there on Saturday. We spent Saturday and Sunday getting them settled in. We went to the grocery store. Then Monday morning, they started their first day of work, and I got in the car and drove back 20 hours by myself to Kentucky.
So I have questions. So the
All
first
right.
question I have is when you left Kentucky, how warm was it?
When we left Kentucky, it was in the high 60s, low 70s.
And when you left Maine, how warm was it?
I drove through snow. And when I got back to
So did
Kentucky, it was in the 80s. So I
so
had
so did Rosewood pack for snow? That's the
yes.
real question.
Yes. Yes, they did. They packed for the full gamut of weather, took their snow boots, like they were very responsible, took everything that they needed. And I pulled my winter coat and all of my gloves and stuff out before we drove up there because I knew like,
Oh,
okay,
good.
it's
So you at
the
least had
high
it
is
with you. You didn't have to go to the
yes.
local store and grab a new one.
No, I was like, the high is 42 the whole time I'm there. I need my coat. Yeah. So we went prepared, but it was a stark change in temperature from one place to the other. It was they have not and it was kind of when you're driving, we were like, we leave Kentucky, everything's very green, things are blooming, and we are in the throes of spring. And then you start going north and things start getting brown and brown and brown. And Rosewood was like, wow, it really has not started spring yet up here. And I was like, no. So they have a really beautiful view from the front window in their apartment. Their apartment has 2 stories. They've got an upstairs, downstairs. The downstairs has a window seat that they can read from, and it looks out onto Main Street and onto the harbor. And we were talking, and I was like, Mouse, you should take a picture every day that you're here out this window of this view, and then you can stream it all together into one video of this is how the seasons change the whole time that you're here. And you would
Yeah.
get winter all the way through to the beautiful leaves changing in Maine. And it's a gorgeous view. So they have started taking the pictures, and I'm really hoping that they stick with it because I think that's going to be a really nice compilation by the
Well,
time they
even
get
once a
to
week would
November.
give you a beautiful picture of what that looks
Yeah.
like. So, like,
Yeah.
reminding them to set an alarm so that they do it at least once a week,
Oh, yeah.
So don't forget to take a
Absolutely.
picture, or you
Yeah,
set an
I know.
alarm and send them a text message. Don't forget to take
Yes.
a picture.
Have you taken your
Maybe every
picture?
Thursday or whatever their day is off
Yeah.
is each week. Maybe, so maybe that's just
Yeah.
one way you can connect with them. One of the things that I've done this year, especially with the boys and their headspace and making sure they're okay, I have Hezekiah loves building Legos. And so,
Hmm.
when I need to check on him, I don't just like send him a text message and say, "Hey, how are you?" I say, "Can I see your latest Lego build?" And so, because I know he's going to send me a picture. And so
Yeah.
he'll respond to that pretty quickly. So, and that goes back to knowing your kids and who they are and, what that looks like in real time and, just staying connected. It's a busy
Absolutely.
world. I mean,
It is.
I if I text him at 9 in the morning, chances of him responding are pretty low. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
he's just not a morning kid.
Well,
So
so okay.
yeah.
So I know you have questions for me, but I have questions for you because you did mention that you are in Texas and you are working with the boys and you're trying to help them get ready. But what people don't know is that part of helping them get ready for the end of this lease is that you guys pulled your old rig out of storage and you guys have been doing work on the rig to try and like make that available for any future work camping adventures that come up. But how has that been going?
So I mean, I am the girl with the backup plan to the backup plan. And
Yes.
so that was originally the thought process behind going over to the RV. It had sat in Indiana for an entire year unwinterized, and we thought we were doing great. Then we brought it to Texas last summer when the boys actually moved here. That was part of the process was moving the camper here and putting it in storage here. So no one's been in it for almost 2 years because this summer it will have been 2 years. And so they went over to start, kind of assessing things. There's some work that needs to be done. We need to take apart, well, it's already been started. The bunk room has, just the slide in it now. The beds are all down where the kids all were in one room at that point.
Mhm.
So, they took a generator, the generator that was sitting at my son's house, they moved it over to the unit so that we could open up the slides and make sure everything was working. And they hooked up some water and found out there's a leak,
Oh,
which they found 2
no.
days ago. And so that was a new expedition. So now we have to find the leak, but it was not winterized in Indiana that winter. So chances are
That's
there's maybe
probably where
more
that
than
came
one
from.
leak in there. And we knew that deep down.
Yeah.
So there's some work that's got to get done. The carpets needed to get pulled. So the goal now this month is to literally like get her, get into it, fix the things that need to be fixed, have a backup plan with it, and, maybe help them launch somewhere with it initially so they don't have to worry about another year somewhere. They didn't really want to move to Texas. They moved to Texas because Justin said it was a good idea. And it turned out that it didn't work out. So, if they get somewhere and they love it 6 months later, we want them to have the availability to have a camper
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
figure that out, so that, and it's not ideal. Like, I mean, they've lived in a camper most of their life. It's not something they don't know. But the real question now is, are they moving out together or is one of them staying here to manage the home office? So we're still working the details out on that. And that might have to be a third part in the series at some point because we just don't know the answer to that question quite yet. So
Yeah.
May is going to be very interesting for us because we're here. So we did something we've never done before. I love when I get to say that. And I've said it so many times this year. After 13
Pivot.
years on the road, I keep thinking there's something that I've not had to do that I'm never going to do. And I've done it again.
Uh-huh.
So we went down to South Texas to do some rallies
Mhm.
last week. And then we're back up in the Conroe area this week. And then we'll go to another rally for a week. It's not a week rally, but I have to be out of this park for a week. And then we come back into this park for a week because Thousand Trails. And so if you know where I am, say hi, wave, send me a message. But 2 days ago, I called the manager and paid retail for a site so that we paid for June. So we are in Conroe through June right now with
Oh,
no
wow.
plans to leave before that. And so there's a whole 7, 8 weeks in Conroe that is all one solid spot. Yeah. So I mean the manager was great. So we got our 3 free weeks and then they booked us for a month of retail, which is technically not bridging in Thousand Trails because
Right.
we paid retail for it. It was a little more expensive than the local parks in town, but Frank has a business trip he has to go on. So we needed to be in a situation where once he finishes with the camper, he can just leave and then not have to move us from one spot in the park to another
Yeah.
spot. So she made sure that happened. So we have stayed a long time in a Thousand Trails campground in 2020 when we were in Orlando and COVID happened. And
Right.
Orlando, they just extended you wherever you were, but we've never had to do it this way. So this is a brand new one. And here's the kicker, we still have to be at the FRVA event in Sedalia, Missouri, the 4th of July. Well, the 1st of July, technically. So, as soon as we finish that reservation, we got 700 miles to climb to Missouri
Girl,
because we have an install there.
that is not a short hike.
Well, but it's not as long as Maine.
It's not, but I also didn't have to pull my rig to Maine. I
Well,
I
only so
was in a
700 miles,
rented
that's
Nissan
if
Rogue.
we do it, by way of a 333 rule, it would take us 2 to 3 days to get there. So, because we try not to pull out too early.
Right.
It was funny, I was talking to Dave at RV Weather this past week, and he's like, "Yeah, well, with my weather model, you can, know that you need to be on the road by 5 in the morning." And I probably rolled my eyes on camera. And I was like, "Oh, that would be bad." But, we might have an early morning where we have to get the kids up and rolling out earlier than
Yeah.
normal to get up
Yeah.
to Sedalia. It'll be worth it, and then, we can't stop rolling. Like ultimately
Mhm.
that's what I would say is, we don't just do a podcast. We don't just
Right.
we own a nationwide RV roofing company. So there's
Yep.
rallies that we've been committed to that we still have to roll to. So we do have a timeline crunch here.
Yeah.
I got to Texas and I had the sinking feeling that now I live here, but I don't think that can be true for us. I mean, yes, that's our
Yeah.
domicile, but I don't think right now that's even in the cards. So,
Yeah.
we've got things on the radar. We got to be in Hershey this fall. There's things we've committed to that we can't say, "Oh, we're not going to do that." So, and that's life, right? So I
Right.
mean, whatever that looks like. So what I've recommended for the boys is, let's get the camper up to par, put it locally in a park here by June 1st. And so we can make sure everything's working and running. And then they stay in the Texas area at least through part of June. And then if they find a work camping job, move it to that work camping job. Or who knows? There's lots of ideas on the table right now, and again, that might take a part 3 to come back to because, having adult kids, when you are traveling, I see so many of my friends that come off the road as their kids hit college. It's
Yeah.
kind of backwards math because they wanted to travel with their children. And then we, have businesses in this. I don't want to say the podcast is a business, but it is in some ways.
It is.
We're asked to be at events and stuff.
Huh.
And so, it's a fun business, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
it's not like it's not like we have to sell something to do the
Right.
podcast appearances. So it's more fun, but at the same time, we can't stop, working at the same time. So, all of those commitments that we've made with RV Roofing Solutions still have to be honored.
Upheld.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah. So, do you think that I mean, I'm gonna ask this question and I already know the answer, but do you think that raising your kids in the RV community shaped how they approach their independence differently from, like, I don't wanna say traditional kids, but sticks and bricks kids?
Maybe. That's a really good question, actually. They've had tons of experiences. Some of them would tell you it was the best thing that ever happened to them. Some of them would tell you that they would have liked to do it differently. I think looking back on it, those experiences as they've aged have changed their perception.
Mhm.
Um, because they have a life that a lot of kids don't have, and I understand that. But at the same time, we did what we felt was right for our family at the time. We are very intentional about meeting up with other families. I mean, you know that because we spent
Yeah.
most of the winter with you, like
Mhm.
physically with you,
Yeah.
booking reservations and making sure that the kids had connections. We are choosing to stay in the park we're in right now because there's more families that are here than at another park. So it's very intentional. And they include the electric. So, it kind of is a wash when you look at it that way in June in Texas.
Right.
So it's a great question. I don't know if we'll know that answer until 10 years from now. And
Yeah.
so you do what you think is right at the time for your
Yeah.
family. And, sometimes it doesn't align with what they believe after the fact when they look back on it. And you have to be okay with that because ultimately, at the end of the day, you're a parent and you're making decisions, and your kids are not always going to agree with your decision.
Yeah. Do you think they're more comfortable with
Let's jump back to you because I wanna hear how you felt driving away from
Oh,
Rosewood and because you were radio silent for, like, 6
I
days,
was. Yeah.
and I understood that, and I respected that, but I was worried about you, and so, because
I
it's a
did a
big deal
lot.
having your oldest move away for the
Yeah.
first time.
I did a lot of audiobooks. I literally did audiobooks the whole way back from Maine. Just I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone, or I just felt like if I started talking about it, I was gonna have to pull over and I was
Yeah.
not going to be able to drive. So it was like, let's listen to this book about, world politics. Let's listen to this book about it was,
Well, at least it
I'm
wasn't
gonna
true crime because then you'd have been,
right,
really worried.
right. Um it was I was really proud of them. I was so enamored. They they just jumped in. And it honestly, I feel like didn't hit me in my core until maybe I was all the way back in Kentucky and a couple days in that it was like my kid's not here. And it's hard when your oldest kid is your best friend and people like we had this conversation one night at dinner when I was in Maine. I was like, no, I hope that We gave you experiences that you feel set you up for life. And I know that, parents never do everything 100% correct because, people are fallible and we do the best that we can. And,
Especially with your
um,
first one because, they're
yeah,
your practice piece. As much as you don't realize it until you're much older and you're looking
yes,
back going and they're saying, "You're a much different parent with your youngest than your oldest."
yes,
Well, yeah, that's because I got better at it. I
yeah,
learned something along the way. You
yeah,
only had 2 tries. I mean,
right,
Judah's the product of 7. He has
right,
very different parents now than,
yeah,
than
yeah,
Ariana had at the top of that
oh,
chain.
yeah.
So, yeah.
But I don't know. We had some really good conversations while I was there, and I feel like that set us up for it set me up for that departure. We did have a 3-hour video call, not yesterday, but the day before. They called on their way home from work. They went and got ice cream, and then they called after they got ice cream, and they ended up talking to us literally until they went to bed. When they hung up, they were laying in bed and I was getting into bed. So we had a good long talk, but I don't know, it's different. Like this weekend, there's a mushroom festival in the next town over, and you giggle because Rosewood loves all things mushrooms, loves eating mushrooms, loves decorating with mushrooms, loves wearing mushrooms. If there is a mushroom in sight, Rosewood is there. So this is like a Rosewood thing, and Rosewood is not here for it. And then B, an outing like this, if we were to go to it, my kids, David would be like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'll stay here." And Rosewood would be like, "Yeah, let's go. Let's go 5 minutes ago. I'm ready to go. Let's go." And last night we found out about it and I literally was like, "David, you want to go?" And he was like, "You're asking me that for real? Do you know me at all?" I was like, "Oh, I wish Rosewood was here because they would be like, let's go to the mushroom festival. So it's
So the
gonna,
real question here is this, though. Are you going to the mushroom festival?
yes, we're gonna go to the mushroom festival and I'm gonna eat some
Because your
mushrooms
life
and then
hasn't stopped.
it doesn't stop.
I talk I think we actually probably need to consider an episode on this whole conversation, but, like, I think it was so easy to find friends when my kids were little. You'd go to the
Yeah.
playground, at any campground, you'd sit there, and even as an older mom, people would engage with me, but as an older mom, first of all, with teenagers that don't wanna go do stuff all the time, they'll go out sometimes, but they're not going to candy bar bingo every week, let's be real. So, it's harder to make those connections, I mean,
Yeah.
like, if you weren't a stalker, you might not have made a connection with me. So I don't
Right? I mean, my stalking abilities, they've helped a few times.
yeah. But okay, so let's talk summer plans though, because I think that,
Yeah.
there's a silver lining for you this summer. You
Yes.
are going to Maine, correct?
We are
So
going to
you get
Maine.
to see Rosewood in her
We'll have
new
2
element.
weeks. Yes, we've got 2 weeks in Maine in July, and so we will get to go up and see them and then have to turn around and say goodbye all over again, which is gonna be miserable, but that will be nice to be up
But you'll get
there
to see
and
them when the whole staff is there,
yes,
and
yes,
there's gonna be some benefits to that. They'll probably have some new friends to introduce you to,
yes,
and so, like, that whole lifestyle. Now, I know you said they plan on staying, but let me say this, after summer comes, I think that they're gonna see a totally different perspective because a lot of those people are
yeah,
either gonna go back to school, because 'cause I'm sure it's a lot of college kids that are coming in for the
probably.
season. The other side of it is when we worked in Yellowstone that year, there were a handful of people that there was housing on the KOA. And
Uh-huh,
so a lot of the people that didn't have an RV went into the housing very similarly, only it was like dorm style housing. And a lot of them left together. They
yeah,
found ski resorts and winter type stuff like that where they went and work camped. One of them actually went to a dude ranch in Arizona and it was a brother and sister team. And then his sister went somewhere else. So, like, there's different ways to do it. And
yeah,
so I think that even saying now, this is what I want to do, doesn't mean that, come October or September or even August when they start looking at positions, that that's going to be the case. It's an
right,
adventure of their own and they
yep,
get to decide what they do next.
yep, yeah,
But
and
that's the uncertainty part too. So,
Yeah, yeah, and that was something that we talked about this week was, the particular area that they are in, there are not rental units there. So, they would have to go if they stayed there in Maine, they would have to go to another town. So, there's a whole
Yes.
logistics that way. But then they talked about, what about finding another work camping experience somewhere else and then coming back to the place that they're at now for next season. And so I think,
And a lot of people do that.
yeah, yep. And I think it's exciting to watch them imagine what the future can hold for them. And to have I think for a long time they just weren't sure that there was anything out there for them. They couldn't I don't know, they couldn't see where they fit in the bigger picture of things. They couldn't see how their interests came together to to make a path for them in this world. Everything in today's culture was saying you need to have this much money and you need to be this successful and you need to live this life that those are not the things that Rosewood has ever been interested in. I have an art kid. I have I have a kid who's very empathetic. I have a kid who likes to explore. I have a kid who is very walks against the grain to their own drum, like every cliche phrase that you can think of, that is my kid. And they come by it naturally. They get it from their parents. And so I think that the exciting thing seeing them in Maine was that not only were they going, wait a minute, there is something out there that I might fit into, but they also met a couple people who were a lot like them that had those experiences that they were talking to. There's not that many other workers up there right now because things don't open for another they don't fully open for another month. The national media doesn't open for like another month fully. And so even the shops that Mouse is working in, there are they're not fully staffed. So, the apartments right now, there's like the apartments that are right there where Rosewood is living. Rosewood's one person in a four-person apartment. There's four apartments in a row that there's just one person in each. There's only like 2 people and a manager in their store right now, and the store is not open full hours yet. It's on shortened hours. So, they are meeting just a few people. They're getting like a slow entrance into it. They're getting a slow kind of introduction to that lifestyle, and I think that's probably best for them for it being their first
Yeah.
job, their first apartment, their first time out. So it's kind of perfect. But I don't know, it
And you got
felt
months to
good
think
leaving
through
them.
if she does move out into her own place, having her have a savings plan and talking her
Yeah,
through it. And,
yep,
you still have that voice with your kids, which is wonderful. I don't think most parents lose that. So,
yeah,
but, at that point, she's still also an adult. So she's going to
yep,
make her own decisions.
yep,
So, ultimately, at the end of the season, she doesn't have enough to move out into an apartment up there because it's expensive, especially to
yes,
live on your
it
own.
is.
Then everybody else leaves and goes back to school or goes to their next work camping job, she may not have that option. So,
Yeah,
just being, a part of that conversation is important.
mhm,
And so, if you're out there and you're having kids that are launching into the real world, either next year or beyond, we're here to help you navigate that. We're not professionals at this. I mean, like really, we're
no.
just doing it just like everybody else does. We have work camped with our kids, like alongside them in different places. And that takes a whole new level of settling down for 5 months and, making additional plans. We're fortunate in the fact that we own a company where we can pay the kids to go on installs with us and do some work from home, but that's not always the case. But there's so many ways to do that out there in this world. And there's no one wrong way, but I do think you need a decent list of things that you need to have in your back pocket as guidance for those teens and young adults that are launching into the world because there are things they
Mhm,
haven't thought about, like first and last month's rent. Do they have a driver's license?
yes,
Are they comfortable driving in snow like you had to do?
mhm,
So, I mean, there should be a checklist of some kind for families that are navigating this. And it's not easy. There's always that need for support as your kids run off into the real world. That empty nest syndrome it's real. You feel it. You feel it when you walk
Yep.
into a store and you look at something and go, "Oh,
I
my
had
girl wants
that in
that."
a Love's gas station on the way
Yes, and it
back.
happens in the weirdest places.
Yes.
Yep,
It was horrible. I was like, "Oh,
yeah,
I could get that drink for no one because they're not in the car."
right. Yes, yes. So all those little things you used to do, you don't know what to do with that energy. And
Mhm.
so there's something to be said for that. So care packages, you have an advantage because she's staying still all summer and you can do care
Yep.
packages.
I
But
have
the
a PO
advantage of
box.
being able to go visit them is amazing. And
Yes.
so there's that side of it. It's nice being home, seeing the kids, and we're going to enjoy Texas even though it's hotter than blue blazes here and it's not going to get better. So, the last time I did summer in Texas, my daughter was pregnant with my granddaughter, and we stayed here because we needed a place for her to have a baby. So we stayed in
Right.
Texas through a good portion of the summer. So, I haven't done that since 2017 on purpose. And so by July, I need to be gone because I just know that it's going to get hotter and there's hurricane season.
Mhm.
And the company still has to, make its appearances at all the places we've already committed to. So, it's definitely one of those things where we have to think through all of that. So, all right. Well, yeah. Take a deep breath,
Yeah.
Tasha. You've
Big
got
deep
this.
breath. Yes.
Yep.
Yes. I think right now it's harder for me than it is for them, which might make it
Absolutely.
even harder for me than it
Yes.
is for them. But it's gonna be
But you did
okay.
a good job distracting yourself last night. I want to commend you. You went out
Thank
with
you.
friends
Thank
for
you. I
pizza.
did.
So, like,
I went out for
yay. That's
pizza,
that's a step in the
pizza
right
and
direction.
moonshine. I did it all the right ways. Pizza and moonshine in Kentucky. Well, if you guys have any stories that you want to share about launching your kids out into the real world, or if you have some tips for this mama who is just trying to make it day by day while her heart is trying to mend, you can share those at our Facebook group or through our
And,
Patreon. Oh, yes. How can I help you?
and, and I
And
learned something this week.
what'd you learn?
So on learntorvthepodcast.com on the website,
Uh-huh.
there's a
Oh,
little
yes.
microphone in the right-hand corner of the screen. Did
Yes.
you know people can leave us a voice note? We got our
I
first voice note
didn't.
this week.
We got a first note,
Yep.
a first voice. We got a
It
voice
was for
note. We
me.
got a voice.
It was
Are
for
you
me because I wanted to see how it worked.
I
But
was like,
if you
people
don't have
left us
time
a
to type
message?
out an email or you don't want to join a Facebook group, you can just send us a message by hitting that little microphone and sending us a little voice note, and we can get those messages.
That's awesome.
I
I
just
like
thought it was
that.
cool.
It was from you. You're such a goober. I was all excited. I was like, somebody left us a message? I was hook, line, and sinker. I was sold. So leave us a
We're
message.
just going to have to hope somebody actually leaves us the message now because they feel bad for us.
Learn to RVthepodcast.com. Leave us a message, hit the microphone, or if you've got a story that you want to share with us or on the podcast for our upcoming campfire confessions, it is coming, I promise. And we will have really cute little stickers for the stories that get shared. You could also leave it as a voice message. Just let us know if we can share your name. But thank you guys so much for joining us today around the campfire. We can't wait to sit down with you and share some more stories again next time.
See you soon.